All right, good morning. It's middle of the week, Wednesday. Hope everything's good in your world, that everything's rocking and rolling and you're enjoying life. And life's short, right? I mean, we all know that. We should redeem these days. We should make the most of what we've got. And hope everything's good in your world. We are in some good weather days here in the South. Makes me happy. And just enjoying life. Tammy, um, I'm late coming in here sometimes. I'm like, we get so busy talking. I'm trying to look at the clock and I forget. Oh yeah. I got to come in here and teach. I love that our time in the mornings. I don't know where you find time with your family and all, but you got to have those times. And I don't mean where you're sitting together and you're looking at your phones or whatever. I mean where you just kind of sit at a table or sit in a room and have conversation and talk about life and things. It's amazing, really. We have all kind of strange conversations in there. We were just doing some like Greek word study things a while ago. Just looking at different words. But anyway, enough of that. We are winding down Jesus' Gentile tour. That's kind of what I've coined it. And I think sometimes you miss a lot of things when you don't really walk through chronologically the Gospels. It's easy and it's fun just to pick stories out at random, right? I've done that a lot. I've taught through the Sermon on the Mount. I've taught through the parables of Jesus. I've taught through different things like that. But to actually walk through his life, you see some things that you may potentially miss. And so today, it probably could be one of those. There's another feeding, and most people think, how come one says 5,000, one says 4,000? Was it a retelling? It's two completely different feedings that Jesus is doing here. And as you walk through it, you begin to see why it is the way it is. And so let's just kind of jump into that. We're in Mark chapter 8. We're making progress. We're halfway through now. Well, almost halfway. When we get halfway in, after today, we'll be almost halfway through. This is our 31st lesson through the Gospels, and so that's a long time, right? If we were preaching, that'd be well over 3/4 of a year. But this way, it really is just a couple of weeks. It feels like. But anyway, we're in the book of Mark, chapter 8, and we have just finished up where Jesus healed the deaf man. He is in his Gentile tour now. So I kind of told you that. On the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee and north is Gentile territory. That's Lebanon, Syria, all of those. In our modern day, it's on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. And so Jesus had spent most of his time on the little northwest, little northeast, and that's where he has been, and then down into Samaria. He is beginning a little more teaching, and then he's going to be heading down to Jerusalem because he knows that's where he's going to die for your sins and mine. So he's been about almost 2 years in this thing, and he has gone north to Tyre and Sidon, and then which is Lebanon, and it's Gentile, lots of paganism, lots of not much about the God of Israel. They all know him because Asher was charged with settling that. He did not. But it's heavily Romanized, and so then he makes his way, bypassing Galilee for the most part, hitting the edge of it, coming down to Decapolis, which again is 10 city, that's Deca, right? So there's that Roman influence there, Decapolis. So it's heavily Romanized, lots of paganism, not much about the God of Israel, but they do know. So Jesus has been doing ministry down there. He gets to the last thing we did after he began to heal everybody in that region, because we believe that the demoniac probably had told some of them, because it was sort of where his region was. That makes all sense to you. I love the geography of things and just seeing what's going on. So I just want to put you in perspective. But Jesus is driving home a point to his disciples because it's probably been a couple of month journey. It's about a round trip. Somewhere maybe 150 miles they've gone, and now they're going to take a boat and kind of hit the diagonal length of the Sea of Galilee, and so whatever journey that would have been. We don't know a lot about what happened here. This is kind of the big event, the culmination of the big event. It's the last thing he's going to do before he leaves. But it was very intentional, just like it was intentional that he went through Samaria because he wanted them to understand, his disciples, that the Samaritans were loved too, because they were considered Jew dogs. They were half-breeds. And so there was just a lot of fight between the two, and they both worship one God, but two different places and different methods and so forth, and one felt more like an outcast than the other. Jesus was determined to show that he came to be Savior of all, not just the Jew, but also the Samaritan. And now he's showing that I'm also going to redeem the Gentiles also. So he's bringing the gospel to them. They're down here, and they have swollen in numbers on the slope, the eastern slope of the Sea of Galilee. He's been teaching and healing for 3 days. In the midst of this, they have said to him and they were glorifying the God of Israel. They say, "This man does all things well." I love that phrase. He has done all things well. It can't just mean healing. Oh, that was a good job on that healing. I can't see it being that. I think it's the encompassing of everything that they have heard and known about him. I think they were mindful of his attentiveness to them. I think they were mindful, because we all saw that he took the deaf and dumb man, mute man, away from the crowd to have that one-on-one conversation. I think they recognize that they appreciate that about him. I don't know why, side note, but we had a doctor. It was my doctor when I was a kid, Dr. McDonald, over in Eastwood Mall area. And when my kids were younger, they started going to Dr. McDonald too. And so, Tammy would make me go to the doctor appointments with him. I say that because it was like, oh, really? And we would sit in that office, it felt like, for 8 hours before we got to see him. And you get so frustrated, like, we're going to go see another doctor. But when you got into the room with Dr. McDonald, you realize then you were his patient. He didn't care who was in the waiting room. He didn't care who was in the next room. He was all about you. And we desperately appreciated Dr. McDonald in our life. He was just a good old doctor that understood life. And so I always think, when this came up, it made me think of him, because I'm sure Jesus was a lot like that. The crowds are everywhere, and you're trying to get to him, and that you're breaking up ceilings to get him down in there, and they're throwing him at his feet, and all of those things, that he does all things well, that he's attentive to your need. And I love that about him. I love the fact, remember we looked when the woman with the issue of blood came, but he was also going to take care of Jairus, and so he's dealing with her, but he hears people telling Jairus that that his daughter is dead, leave the man alone. The fact that he can be totally tuned into the woman and totally tuned into Jairus is an amazing concept of the God we serve. And I want us to be in awe of that. I don't want us to think that we're in some waiting room somewhere on Jesus, and so we kind of put our request in, right? We prayed, and now it's in the loop, it's in the system. We're just waiting for him to get to our need. That's not how it operates at all. And this is what we find here in the beginning of this story. I want to tell you, those were the things he says. I'm also reminded, and I don't know if he told them or not, but there's a truth. Here's what I want us to understand, because it's going to say that Jesus feels compassion in just a minute, and then it's powerful truth. In fact, let's just read the story. It says, in those days, when chapter 8, when there was again a large crowd and they had nothing to eat, again in those days, nothing to eat, Jesus summoned his disciples and said to them, "I feel compassion for the people, because they have remained with me for 3 days already and have had nothing to eat." He goes, these people have come out because they have so many needs and they have so many wants. And for 3 days, he said, they've been here. I feel compassion about them. Let that sink in. I feel compassion about them. The God that we serve feels compassion. Not just he is compassionate, like that's kind of one of his deals. He is compassionate. No. in his bowels. He feels it, right? I think we've had this conversation before, but it's important that we understand that our God had compassion. He said to Jerusalem, "Oh, Jerusalem, how I wanted to bring you in and place you under my wings, but you were unwilling." If we go through the Old Testament, you see that phrase all the way through the scriptures. Lamentation 3 is the classic that comes to mind. The Lord's loving kindness never ceases. His compassions are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. All right, listen, if you don't learn anything else today, before we even get to this story, just see that the loving kindness of the Lord never ceases. It never takes a break. Never goes, I love, 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 love. Not today. No, not you. Loving kindness never ceases. Always a constant flow. The God that we serve is constantly in love with you. That's what the Old Testament says. The New Testament verifies it in so many ways, this story being one of them. His compassions are new every morning. He doesn't get worn out, right? Well, like we do with our own kids, life comes at us and we're like, again? Seriously, how many times are we going to have this conversation? I don't care whether you're hungry or not. I gave you food, and you know how we can do with our kids. His compassions are new every morning. He's able to feel and empathize with us on a constant basis. This is what separates him from every other little god that's out there. There's no one like him. And his faithfulness, when we're unfaithful, he's still faithful because there's not comparison game. He's faithful because he's true and good in all that he is. Now, enough of that. Let's look at the story and see what goes on. He says, he's looking at his disciples. He's going, man, I feel compassion for these guys. I mean, if I send them away hungry to their homes, they're going to faint on the way. I mean, this is a rugged journey here, man. They hadn't eaten in 3 days and they've been sleeping on the ground. You and I, at least, we knew we'd been kind of traveling, tent camping, so to speak, around. And he says they'll faint and on their way, and some of them have come from a great distance. And his disciples replied, where will we be able to find enough bread here in this desolate place to satisfy these people? Now, at this point, I'm like, 3 days you've been seeing him heal everybody. Just a few months earlier, you were on the hillside when he fed the 5,000 and you collected 12 little baskets of leftovers. And you're going, where are we going to get food? Oh my. I'm like, how crazy is that? But every time we have a new need, a new panic, we tend to do the same thing, don't we? Oh God, how are we going to get out of this? Oh wait, the Lord who brought us this far will carry us home, right? And so we need that constant reminder. I can so identify with these guys. And he was asking them, how many loaves do you have? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, what kind of food do we have out there? And they said, well, we got 7 loaves. And he directed the people to recline on the ground, and taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks and broke them and started giving them to his disciples to serve. So he's like, all right, guys, come on. So he started to break off these loaves. Now, what's happening is this thing is growing in his hand. He's just creating. He's creating, not out of anything. He's just creating. This is fresh bread, right? I mean, whatever is going on, it's not like he just had this, loaf stretcher. He created out of nothing, really, bread. And they did find some fish, so they add that to the mix. It says they also had a few small fish. And after he had blessed it, he told the disciples to serve these as well. And they ate and were satisfied. We're back to that point again. They were not just, we had a little snack, that'll get us home. No, they had a meal. They were satisfied. Their stomachs were full. All 4,000 plus whatever, 20,000 people here. He told the disciples to serve them as well, and they ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 7. These are large baskets, different than the baskets that they had, which was kind of like a fish and tackle type, like you just kind of, or your lunch box. This is a bigger basket. This is like one of those huge Yeti ice boxes, right? I mean, ice chest. That's what this is. Where they came from, I don't know. Could have been that they had them or somebody else had them, but they filled those full. 7 of those full. And they ate and were satisfied, picked up 7 full baskets of the broken pieces. About 4,000 men were there, and he dismissed them. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and came to the region of Dalmanutha. Now, that's the message. That's the thing that we need to notice. Now, why did he do this? Why duplicate the same miracle? Well, I mean, he healed a lot of people with the same diseases. I think strategically, he's driving into his disciples' mindset that they are going to reach the Gentiles too. That the God of all creation, God Most High, didn't just have in his mind to save the Jews, but to save all of his people. And so the gospel is good for the Samaritans. The gospel is good for the Jew. The gospel is good for the Gentile. The gospel is good for you and me. We aren't left out. We aren't the proverbial redheaded stepchildren. We aren't the Cinderella kind of forgotten over here. He is focused. His compassion is toward us as well, and that's woven throughout all the scriptures. But then also just his provision. I mean, there's so many layers of thoughts I have as I look through this. But remember in Matthew 6 when he says, "Hey, take no thought for what you shall eat or drink. For your Father knows exactly what you need." I love that about him. Listen, God doesn't miss a thing. Hey, I forgot my meal. Well, God's got you covered. Oh, I didn't take care of that. God's got you covered. There's not one thing that comes into your life that God doesn't already know it and already have provision for you in that moment. This is truth. And my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in Christ Jesus. He has an abundance, not out of his riches, like they're depleting, but according to. Like if you need the whole warehouse, he is able to give you the whole warehouse and still have a whole warehouse. So it's not like, I can't give you all that because I got to save some for someone else. No, he lavishes you and me with provision daily in our life. Are we aware of that? Are we mindful of that? And that provision is not just food. It could be people. It could be, monetary. It could be health. He provides for his people. And it's important that we do that and that we understand that. And so, and our God is great. I love that one phrase. I'm gonna let you go. That he feels compassion. There's so many thoughts about that come to mind. But one is that I think we need to understand something, that the God we serve is not like you or me or anyone else. When he tells us to be completely humble, that means that we regard others as more important than ourselves, that in fact we don't really think of ourselves at all. We are here to serve others. That's who our God is. What other God do you know of that came to serve us, right? I mean, there's no such thing. And so just to know that he's completely humble, he has the ability to see my life, to be empathetic toward me, to lay aside whatever need he perceives that he may have and meets my need. The only God. Why would anyone want to chase after anything other than him? And so this is who he is. He's completely humble. He's completely gentle. Do you notice how he treats these people? He's harsh to those who think they know it all. He's harsh to the Pharisees, but he's gentle to everyone else. And we just need to know that this is the God that we serve. And I know we know that. I know you know that. I'm not trying to act like you don't. I just think sometimes we need to slow down and remind ourselves of this, to fall in love again with the God that we know and we've grown comfortable with, and maybe we've lost our first love with him and we take him for granted. Don't do that. Don't do that. The God that we serve is full of compassion. He's full of mercy. And he's full of humility. And he's for us. All right? So listen, you may go to work today and you may go wherever and you think, man, ain't nobody care about me. That's not true. That's not true. The God of all creation cares about you. So love you guys. I hope you have a great day today. I'm looking forward to mine. Lord willing, I'll see you tomorrow.